Okay, I know everyone's going to be talking about this conversation, blogs, people would be upset by it, but it's really just to sort of get you to pay attention to what's going on. Maybe it'll help educate you a little bit. Maybe it'll educate me and our guest, our panel. The vigorous debate over health care reform has stirred up a lot of emotions all across the country. Historic vote of Congress, some of those emotions spiked, resulting in some ugly words, threats, and actions directed at both sides of the aisle.
I know many Americans are angry over this health care bill and angry at Democrats here in Washington for not listening. But as I've said before, violence and threats are unacceptable. They have no place in a political debate.
Someone hurled a brick through the window of my district office in the dark of night.
My wife and kids are at home. They're organizing protests in front of my house. We're getting death threats.
A bullet was shot through the window of my campaign office in Richmond this week, and I've received threatening emails.
This morning with the regular mail, there was a threatening letter with some white powder in it.
Okay, so let's take a closer look at really what can be called reckless, even dangerous rhetoric, and how a few key words can push all the wrong buttons and inspire people to do really crazy things. Our guests tonight are Tim Wise, author of Colorblind, soon to be out, New York Times bestseller, New York Times columnist, I should say, Ben Zimmer, and Marc Lamont Hill of Columbia University. Good to see all of you. Marc, you're always smiling, so let's see if we can keep you smiling.
You make me happy.
Throughout this. Okay, so listen, Tim, we'll start with you tonight. Again, okay. Good to see all of you. So you believe it's not just the angry words being used by healthcare opponents and people on the right, some people on the right, but you say the Obama administration is also choosing the wrong language when it came to this healthcare bill.
Well, what I think the Obama administration overlooked, and I write about this in my upcoming book, is that when they, back in the summer of last year, were using the phraseology of a public option, I think they were naive in the sense that what they forget is that for the past 40 years, whenever we talk about public anything in this country, public transportation, public housing, public schools, an awful lot of people hear, whether it's meant or not, hear people of color as the beneficiaries. And so when you put that out there, a lot of the white folks who already are being told by Limbaugh and Beck that this health care bill is just reparations for slavery end up having that reinforced by the somewhat naive post-racial rhetoric of the administration. I think they played right into that.
And
yeah.
Tim, I see Marc shaking his head trying to get in here. Marc, why are you shaking your head?
Well, because I think there's been a very consistent strategy from the right to racialize public policy so that poor white people who are often most vulnerable or most in need of those policies will vote against it to align themselves with a certain kind of whiteness and whiteness as property, so that the poor white guy in Mississippi that needs welfare votes against welfare because he thinks he's voting against a poor black woman in Harlem.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So as we talk, I want to get Ben in on this because, Ben, again, you write about language in New York Times and the Sunday magazine every Sunday. Words matter, and when you look at this, and you've written a little bit about it, how are you seeing the words being played out? Because they can move and motivate people.
They sure can, and very often there's a kind of a flashpoint, and certainly the healthcare reform debate has been that kind of flashpoint. And with last summer, from the town hall meetings and the rise of the Tea Party movement, we've seen an increasing polarization of the rhetoric. And that has led to some real rancor, and we can see that that when times are really tense like this, that words really do matter, and especially when there are threats to public officials. But that means that everyone has to be cognizant of the kind of tone that they strike, and the kinds of metaphors and figures of speech that are being used may sometimes be inappropriate and sometimes can really be a cause of concern.
Well, here's a question. Should lawmakers be held responsible for the rhetoric that they're putting out there? We're going to play some of it in just a little bit. Do people even realize that they're being motivated by this and that the talking points that are coming from lawmakers? A whole lot to talk about here, including Sarah Palin out today talking about reloading. So guys, stick around. We'll be right back with more on this important discussion right after a short break. Let's continue our discussion now about the rhetoric taking place overheated across America. I want you guys to listen. That's our panel right there. Listen to Sarah Palin out today talking about reloading.
When I talk about it's not a time to retreat, it's a time to reload, what I'm talking about... Now, media, try to get this right, okay? That's not inciting violence. What's that is doing is trying to inspire people to get involved in their local elections and these upcoming federal elections. It's telling people that their arms are their vote. It's not inciting violence. It's telling people, don't ever let anybody tell you to sit down and shut up, Americans.
All right, Tim, Ben, and Mark are back. Mark, listen, freedom of speech, I always say that. People have the right to say whatever they want. I will fight tooth and nail for that. But is it responsible for someone to say that, especially a leader, considering the anger that's going on right now?
This is wholly irresponsible for anyone who prides him or herself as a political leader. I mean, you have crosshairs on a map. You have gun language, militaristic language, and the sort of inciting toward violence. That's a very problematic thing. We live in a country where just 50 years ago, people were shot down for public policy progress. This is another major public policy moment. The same thing could happen again. 20 years ago, we had or 30 years ago, we had a president shot. We live in a moment right now where people are constantly threatened and intimidated through gun violence. We live in a country that has had more gun violence than any other developed nation combined. So it's very irresponsible in that moment to throw rocks and hide your hands and suggest that you're only using metaphors as opposed to possibly inciting the most extreme wing of your party.
So I want to ask Tim this because I just got someone on Twitter, if we can show the board here. Tim said, unbelievable. Don Lemon, all three panelists are working from the assumption of racism. Anybody see this nice diversity of opinion? And there are people, I've been getting things saying, when we do discussions like this, don't talk about race. You're dividing people when you talk about race. And to that you say?
Well, look, I mean, to blame the conversation about race for racism is like blaming the speedometer on your car for the ticket that you just got. It doesn't make any sense. When you have mobs of people surrounding John Lewis, one of this nation's preeminent heroes in the civil rights struggle, and using the N-word with him, when you've got folks showing up at rallies with signs that have the president with a bone through his nose, dressed like a witch doctor, or pictures of the White House lawn covered in watermelons, you don't get to retreat and go, gee, don't talk about that. If you wouldn't talk about it, it would go away. We wouldn't say that about any other problem. I mean, think about world hunger. Who would say, world hunger, gee, if we just don't talk about it, maybe food will miraculously appear on the plates of the hungry. I mean, no other problem on earth would we say that. And here's the thing, Don. Historically, white America has never wanted to talk about race. We didn't want to talk about it in 1963 when 2 out of 3 white Americans said the civil rights movement was pushing for too much and was being divisive. And in 68, Pat Buchanan told Richard Nixon not to go to Dr. King's funeral because he was one of the most divisive people in American history. A lot of white folks on the right have always wanted to stop talking about this, and they've always been wrong in asking for us to.
And Ben, you know, this isn't just, you know, he mentioned, he talked about whites and blacks or what have you, but it's not, this isn't a Republican or a Democrat thing, because language has been used on both sides to sort of stir people and to rile them up and to get them motivated. So it's not, is it a Republican and Democrat thing?
Well, I mean, I think that no party, no side has a monopoly on inflammatory rhetoric. Very often it's the party that is out of power that will have the most inflamed rhetoric, let's say. Very much it's a kind of a raging against the machine. Now, sometimes you might be able to look at it as through the racial prism, as has been suggested. But a lot of times what we see is just a kind of a polarization of both sides. And we can see that this happens through the kind of echo chambers that happen on both the right and the left through partisan blogs and the use of social media now as a way of actually hardening the positions on both sides of a debate.
Mm-hmm. As I'm sitting here reading some of the comments now, so listen, I'm going to wrap it up here. Ben Zimmer, thank you. Marc Lamont Hill, you know this. Quick, what's the solution here? Where do we go from here? I mean, really quickly.
We need to change the language. The language reflects our sensibilities, but in addition to changing the language, we also need to change our practice and really address structural race and racism in this country.
Same thing, Tim. I'll get 5 seconds.
Mark's right. So you have to bring me back and I'll tell you more.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks to all of you, Ben Zimmer, Marc Lamont Hill, and also Tim Wise. We appreciate your conversation, and we appreciate our viewers weighing in as well.